Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Feasting on the Word. I am DG Hamblin, and today I have a little snack for you, something that I discovered as I was studying for a class I'm taking. The class is on New Testament backgrounds, and the textbook uses this particular commentary. You have to be careful with commentaries. They're not inspired. These are the ideas of men. Now, they are educated, they're well versed, but it is their own ideas or the ideas of those who've come before them. So there is some information to be found here, but just be careful. But I found something kind of cool. So I'm studying for this class on New Testament backgrounds. And in the textbook, they quoted this passage here from this reference. If I can find my glasses. And what they're referencing here, what they're talking about is 1 Corinthians 7. And in 1 Corinthians 7, Paul is teaching about marriage. And there's actually a passage here which I have used in the past to try to alleviate fears of those who have maybe joined the church and their spouse didn't, or perhaps they were inactive and they were married to somebody who was not a member, or for whatever reason, somebody who's a member of our church ends up married to somebody who's not. And therefore, they're not married in the temple. And so Paul talks here and he about the unbelieving husband with the believing wife or vice versa. And in verse 14 really is the one that I like to quote about how the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Now, that's not the point that I'm going to make today. The point I want to make today comes actually in the next verse. And it reads like this in the King James Version. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases. What's he talking about there? Well, here he's making a reference back to verse 10 and 11. He says in verse 10 and 11, and unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband, but, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. So there is a clear difference here between these two groups of marriages that Paul is talking about. If two believers are married, then there is an obligation for them to do all they can to remain married, that they should not divorce. And if they do get divorced, they shouldn't marry again or they should reconcile. But for the unbelievers, it's different. Now, it was what I read from this commentary where they quoted this commentary on this. And the Bible Knowledge Commentary says regarding 1 Corinthians 7:15. However, there were exceptions to the rule of no divorce. If the unbeliever insisted on a divorce, he was not to be denied. The word, let's see, it doesn't matter. Let's see. Should this occur, the Christian was not bound to maintain the marriage. And it was the change of the word from here in the King James, where it says a brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases, to where they say here that the Christian was not bound to maintain the marriage. And I went, wait a minute. Okay, this is one of the skills that I teach people to develop as in order to make their study more effective. And one of those skills is to always have in the back of your mind, or as you read, try to look for things which remind you of other scriptures, or really to try to keep it in the back of your mind. So it may not be preoccupying your thoughts to look, but when something pops up, it triggers a memory. And that's what happened. I went, wait a minute, let's go back here and look in Matthew 18. And maybe you'll pick up on this as quickly as I did. Matthew 18:18. And this is Jesus talking to some of his disciples, the apostles. And 18:18 says, verily I say unto you, whatsoever ye shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever ye shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And we take that to mean that they had authority to, among other things, to marry, to perform marriages for time and all eternity, just as we have that same authority today. And some would say, outside of our church, say that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about some other thing. Well, except that when we look at Matthew 18:18, and we look at it in light of what Paul was teaching us here in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, it is clear that there was a difference between the types of marriage that two believers could have versus a believer and an unbeliever. The believers who are married, there is a bond there. Okay, let's look at this word real quick. And it's the same root word in Matthew 18:18 as the word that we have here in 1 Corinthians 7. In Matthew 18, I want to say it's something like deo, and that's the root. It's a verb meaning to bind or to join together, or it might mean to enslave, but generally means to tie something together. And this is a derivative of the same root, but it is an expanded form. It's pronounced duo. I said that wrong. It's pronounced dulao. The transliterated from the Greek into English is typically spelled douloo. Those last two O's are pronounced independently. Dulou. Something like that. I'm not Greek. And it means to enslave or to bring under bondage or to give oneself wholly, meaning completely, to another for their needs and their service. Does that not sound like a way of describing eternal marriage? That we give ourselves completely, not just for this life, but forever, to another. And as Paul is explaining here, two believers married together, we would call it a temple marriage, right? They have a different obligation than a believer and an unbeliever, because as he says in verse 15, if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases. They do not have a sealing. They do not have the eternal bond of marriage in the temple as we do. So, what's the point? The point is that we can use these two verses together, these passages together, to show that, yes, they were performing eternal marriages back during the times in the Bible. Hope y'all enjoyed this little snack. I love y'all. Thanks for listening to me. And coming up shortly in the next couple of days, we'll have the next video in the series on secret combinations, and we will continue that through to the end. We're going to be talking in the next one about what we find in the Book of Mormon, and we'll go into define and really outline very quite well what makes a secret combination, and how we might find or find clues in other scripture as to those who were engaging in secret combinations. Hope to see y'all soon. Love you. Have a great day. Study, feast on the word, learn something really cool, and then go share it with somebody else.